Hello, this is Bill Phillips, and welcome to this presentation of how to build your kit car fast. And by fast, I mean how to get it to your first cruise in within 70 days of the time it arrives on your doorstep. So let's just drop right into this. So the overall purpose of this session is to share the lessons I've learned in my own building of a kit car, and it was actually my first kit car, so by showing this to you as well, it kind of shows that you don't need to be an expert to build a kit car, and nor to do it fast. So any first timer out there could do this as well. I don't possess any special skills or anything, I think, over anyone else. You should be very easy. I shouldn't say easy, but you should be very able to do it yourself as well. Now, even though this is an experience or a look back into a kit car I built myself with some hints and tips, the vast majority of what I'm going to show you today are hints and tips that'll work on any kit car. They're generic to just about any car you'd want to build. Okay? And of course, the key audience here are first-time builders, but people who've already built a kit car may get something out of this as well. Now, not only is it good to get it out to your first cruise in as quickly as possible, I think the real reason you want to build a kit car fast is what I've got down here at the bottom, and that the longer it takes you to build a kit car, the less likely you ever are to really ever complete it. It ends up sitting in the garage growing dust. Before you know it, life creeps in. You have children, work gets heavy, a tarp goes over it, and then a year or two later you just want to sell it for pennies on the dollar. So it really does pay to try to really focus in on the kit car, get to the point to your first cruise in, and maybe push other distractions away so you can get it done, and it doesn't become that, you might say, the corner of shame in your garage, and you really do get it done. Okay, some of the guiding principles and how I was able to build the kit car fast is by nature, I should say by trade, I am a project manager. So I use some of those techniques to build this car as well. So things like breaking the build into phases. When you get the kit car and the piles of parts and a huge assembly manual, it's very easy to get lost in the details. So by breaking into major phases, you can really feel more about where you are in the project, and when you have major accomplishments, you know you are making progress, and there is an end to it. Also, risk management, thinking about where your risks are, and that really depends on the car you're building and your own personal strengths and weaknesses. Some schedule management, of course, some financial management, because there you got to think about how much it's going to cost you. You need to have the money to complete the build. So on schedule management, what I did is I broke up the schedule into what I think is really the ideal schedule to build a kit car. Thinking about the seasons, and I happen to live in Charlotte, North Carolina, where it's pretty hot in the summer, and I don't have air conditioning in my garage. It's just my garage off my house here. So I don't like to work out in the garage when it's 90 degrees out there or hotter. So my plan was to order the car in the fall, receive it in the winter time, build the basic car, and through the winter into the beginning of spring, and then have it ready in spring to start with my cruise-ins. And then during summer and fall, start having a lot of fun with it, and just work on it on the weekends just to complete it. And then the following winter, just finish off the body work and get it painted, and it would be finished. Because during the winter I wouldn't be driving it anyway, so that's a good time to send that work off and have it done. Risks. The two risks that I had, and this really did influence the way that I built my car. A lot has to do with my strengths and weaknesses. But I was afraid that I might not ever start the electronically fuel-injected motor. There's a lot that goes on with a fuel-injected motor, and all you need is one sensor off or one little thing wrong, and it just wouldn't start or wouldn't run right. So I really thought about that in the way I chose my motor and controller and the vendors I chose along the way, and it really affected my decisions. I'll talk about that a little bit later. The other risk I saw for myself was this thing of I was afraid that I might not ever finish it. And again, the under a tarp in the back of the garage for years and not ever finishing it. So that was my real reason for trying to do this so quickly, just to ensure that I would in fact finish it. Okay, if you want to do a quick car build, the place you really need to start is really look at the car you want to build. You need to go out there and look at all the choices. There's 2 or 3 magazines out there that cover kit cars every week. There's a couple in the U.S. I know there's one in the U.K. That show you all the different choices and how people are building it, and reviews from people who have built it, and troubles they're having, and that sort of thing. So go out and look at all those choices. I really look at the one that's right for you. And right for you, I mean, first off, it's got to be something that you're really going to enjoy once you get it finished. I mean, does it really pull at your heartstrings and make your heart race, you might say, when you look at it and think it's just really, really cool, something that's going to really pull you towards completion. The other thing you need to think about in terms of whether it's right for you is how much work is it going to take? How much expertise is it going to take? You've got all different levels of component cars out there today. Everything from a turnkey minus, which is essentially a finished car except for the motor and engine, and then you basically put that you probably drop that in a weekend or within a week and have it running. All the way down to very bare bones sort of kit cars that maybe only include a body and frame and not much more. Fortunately, most of the kit car manufacturers fall somewhere in between those two extremes, with some kit car manufacturers really supplying full kits with pretty much everything you need except for the running gear. I also suggest you go out and you look at completed cars. I mean, pictures look good in magazines and on the internet, but you need to go out and actually look at completed cars. Look at the details. Look at how it's put together. How do the doors fit? Does it come with an interior? And really talk to the people who built those cars and ask what kind of problems they had, how long did it take them, and that sort of thing. Then when you start to narrow it down to the last, let's say, 1 to 3 sort of kit cars that you're thinking about, go out and order the assembly manual and take a look at it. You don't have to go into a lot of detail as you're reading it, but take a look at it for a couple of reasons. Once you start looking at how it's built with illustrations and that sort of thing in the manual, you'll get a much better sense of what it's going to take to get that built. Do you have the expertise to do it? Do you have the time to do it? And also, as you're looking at how it's built, is the manual clear on what you need to do? And gives you a sense of what's under the hood of this kit car as well. When you look at the illustrations, really take a look at how it's built. Is it put together kind of haphazardly, or is it have really nice components? Is it really worth the money you're paying for it? Okay, the other thing that you really want to look at is when you're choosing your kit car is even above and beyond the kit car, really what you're doing is you're buying the company. The last thing you want to do is to buy a kit car and then not be able to get it finished because you've got some questions that you just can't get answered about the kit car. So you really do want to look into things like, does the kit car manufacturer have a tech support line that's open to you? Things like forums and other sources of help. And I'm going to talk a little more about help later on. But you do want to ensure there's at least some other people out there who can help you with that kit car specific information so you don't get stuck. Of course, estimate the cost. That starts with the kit, but that's just the beginning. You need to think about the engine, transmission, things like wheels can cost quite a bit. And the really one of the really big items here on the list is that body and paint. You can spend a tremendous amount of money on body and paint if you're not a body and paint guy. Like I say, do you have the time? And last, and certainly not least, do you have your spouse's support? Does she see the dream with you? Is she willing to give you some time in the garage, kind of strike you from her social calendar for a while so you can get this project done? So that's also very important in getting that done. So after looking at all these different styles of cars. You can see some examples over here on the right. The most common kit car out there, of course, is the Cobra. Lots of different companies make those. Lotus 7 is very big in Europe as a kit car. You've got the bathtub Porsches and some mid-engine cars that are out there as well, like this SLC. So take a look at those, see what's right for you. And the one that I chose is the Factory 5 33 hot rod. I always liked the 33 over the 32 Ford, and this one just struck me as the one that I wanted to build. Liked the way the suspension was set up and just the components that were used. And I'd always liked that Ford 32 valve double overhead cam 4.6 motor. And that was one of the options for this one. So that was probably the clincher for me and the reason that I chose this particular kit. Okay, you heard me talk a little bit about strengths and weaknesses. And this is kind of a funny thing to talk about maybe when you're thinking about kit car, but the truth of the matter is that it takes a lot of different kinds of skills to build a car. You need to know about how the drivetrain works, suspension, brakes, interior, paint, troubleshooting, all sorts of things. And the truth of the matter is very few people actually have all those skills. So you need to think about what your strengths and weaknesses are. So you'll be able to have a better realistic idea, truly a realistic idea of what you'll be able to do yourself versus where you're going to need some help to get it finished. Okay? So, for example, I'll just share some of my strengths and weaknesses. I am a, kind of like it says here, a longtime motorhead, shade tree mechanic, not a professional by any means. It's just kind of what I do out in my own garage out here by the house. And work experience, I was an aircraft electronics technician, actually on Air Force One, way back in a previous life. And then I spent quite a bit of time in software and hardware, research and development. And then for about the last 10 or 15 years, I was project manager. So my strengths, basic drivetrain, the electrical part, and the project management methodology. Basically, what project management is the science of how to get stuff done. So that really helped me get through this. And key weaknesses are things like I'm not real good on interior, bodywork, and definitely not paint. So those were key areas where I sought help. So you need to do the same sort of assessment for yourself here, where you're strong, where you're not, and that's going to help you understand what parts that, what you're going to plan to do yourself versus where you're going to get some help doing it, or maybe just completely farm it out. Like, for example, I did farm out the majority of the bodywork and all the paint on this particular car. So this is where it really helps to, like I say, to understand where you need help. So let's talk about help. Again, the last thing you want to do is to try to build this kit car, in isolation, completely on your own. As I finished my car, I get to talk to a lot of people who are building kit cars as well, and particularly the same one that I built. And they talk about how long and so hard and how long it's really been taking them. Then I ask them about where they're getting help, and they're just not seeking help at all. I mean, there's so many resources out there. And if I had to say that's certainly one of the keys to my success on building this car, it was going and seeking help of people out there to help me in areas where maybe I just wasn't so strong. So let's take a look at some of these sources of help. First off, if there's something specific to the particular car you're building, the kit itself, you want to call the tech support of your manufacturer. And they should be able to help you with kit car specific questions. Another good place is to start building a relationship with your local auto parts store, whether that's a Napa, an Advanced Auto, or AutoZone, whatever is close to you. And what I find in those stores, there's kind of two kinds of clerks behind the counter. One kind is they're gonna, no matter what you're looking for, they're gonna ask you what make, model, and year of the car you want to get the part for, and that's the only way they know how to find a part. They look it up on the computer, and it tells them what bin. They go get it, and they charge it. And then the other kind of person are the true motorheads. They're the car enthusiasts. And those are the ones who can really help you find that funny little part, or that radiator hose with two 90-degree turns in it that go into an S fashion. And you wouldn't know where to find that if you had to go by a make and model, but they know where that is. That's in a bin in the back, and they're willing to go back there and search for you, and sometimes let you go back and take a look too. Those are the kinds of people you really want to find in those auto parts stores. Remember, my dad used to tell me there's two things you buy at a hardware store. In this example, he says, of course, you buy hardware, but you also buy advice. So it really pays once you find one of these auto enthusiasts to really give some loyalty to those stores where those people are employed. One example, for example, in my local Napa store, there was this one fellow who was just really into Fords, and I think I told you, putting a Ford motor into this particular kit car. And this guy was a real Ford enthusiast. In fact, I used to call him my Fordologist. And he helped me quite a bit finding some very unique little parts to make the motor work in there. Things like fuel line adapters and some hoses and some things like that. And so I was very loyal to that store until I started noticing I wasn't seeing him there anymore. And then I ran into him a little while later, and he had moved down to the local AutoZone. Well, I got to tell you, as soon as I found that out, I changed stores where I shopped. And even though AutoZone was another 3 or 4 miles away, that's where I did my shopping from there on out. So it really does pay to give your loyalty to those auto parts stores that really do employ those auto enthusiasts. Also enjoy, or I should say, join your local car club. For example, I was saying I put a Ford in this one, so there's a local Ford club here where I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. We're very active and got some real experts on anything that has to do with a Ford. That doesn't mean to say that you can ask these people to come and do your kit for you and spend a lot of time, but you'd be surprised how just sitting around, I don't know, having a beer or something with them after a club meeting and just talking about what kind of problems you're having, how they might have a little piece of advice that can really help you. Like, for example, I had this little leak coming out of the end of my transmission, right at where the drive shaft yoke comes into it. And come to find out there's a little cap that can work its way loose there that I never would have known about. I found that from a fellow in a local car club who had worked on Fords, and he knew that was a problem, particularly when you take salvage yard parts. So things like that can make you crazy for hours, days, months, whereas a little conversation with someone who's an expert in that area can really help you. Be active in internet forums. This is a really strong one as well. I find that if you're strong in a forum, in other words, you're out there, you're contributing what you know, and people get to know you and get a reputation as helping them, then they are very quick to turn around and help you when you hit an area where you're not so good in. So that's a wonderful reference to use out there. Of course, search the internet, just Google it. You'd be surprised what you can find out there. And all the things I've talked about so far are absolutely free. Costs you no money to do any one of those 5 things. So, and you'll be able to find probably 95% of what you need just through those resources. But of course, if those all fail, you can always pay a professional. You can always find someone in the garage, again, have to be a car enthusiast who might help you to fix whatever problems you're having or an area in which you still feel comfortable. So lots of areas for help. Don't be afraid to reach out and get some help from those folks. Okay, so now you've done it. You've decided what car you're going to buy. You feel comfortable with where you can get your help. So now it's time to actually go out and actually swipe the credit card, make that decision, and buy the car. And that's a really big day, and it actually you almost have to close your eyes and do it and say, "Yep, I'm really going to get this thing done," and then start working towards success. So Once you swipe that credit card and you actually place your order, the car is probably not going to arrive for another 6 to 12 weeks. That's a lot of time. That's a lot of time you can actually get started on the car. And that's one of the key things you want to do if you want to get this kit car done quickly. So the next couple of charts, I'm going to talk about all the stuff you can get done in that still 6 to 12 weeks. So the first thing here is to get your workspace ready. So get it all cleaned out. Make sure you have plenty of lighting. I can tell you, you never ever have enough lighting in your garage. In fact, when I had the house I'm in built, I had a lighting designer out there to put lighting in the garage, and I think she put one fluorescent light per bay, and she thought that was plenty. She thought it was crazy when I put about, I think I've got probably at least four per bay in my garage. She thought I was way overbad, but I can tell you what, I still don't have enough light. So don't be afraid to install that lighting. Use 3 or 4 foot fluorescent tube lightings. They don't take a lot of power. They're pretty cheap and they're easy to install. Do that. Do things like paint your garage floor lighter color, paint your walls white, whatever, get some reflection. Whatever you can do to get some more light, that will definitely help you and speed up the build. So you can see in particular here what my garage looked like after the cleanup, and then down below, lower right, you can see all the stuff that comes in as part of the delivery on this particular car. And you should pretty much figure on taking up a 2-car garage in order to build a car. I've seen people do it with 1 car by putting the body and all these other parts on a dolly that kind of move in and out. And I suppose you could do that on a pinch, but it's a much more difficult way to go. If you've got 2 cars, garage space, that would be much better. Start gathering your tools. Most of what you're going to need are just typical tools you find around your house, screwdrivers, wrenches, ratchets, that sort of thing. But there are some other things you should get. You're going to have to drop a motor in there, so you're going to need some way to hoist the motor. Either buy a hoist or even rent a hoist. I really suggest renting because it's not something you use very often. It's just going to take up a lot of space in your garage if you buy it. Definitely get a good set of jack stands. Don't try building this car on some stacked up wood or cinder blocks. It's just not safe. Get some jack stands. They're cheap and it's just not worth the risk. Try getting some of these new power tools, the new battery powered tools. The old nickel cadmiums I kind of had a love-hate relationship with. I liked using them when they worked, but it seemed like they were always dead. These new lithium tools, though, are really wonderful. They have lots of power. They last a long time. You can get them in tool sets, many times with these really high-intensity lights. That really save you versus a regular drill where you've got a cord, you're always tripping over the cord, it's caught on things. Even air tools, if you can replace air tools with electric tools in a lot of ways, that's even better too. But still, an air compressor is helpful, particularly like with an impact gun. They still are more powerful than the electric ones. And in particular, the car that I built had something like 1,200 rivets, so an air riveter was really the reason I bought the compressor. And that saved me some carpal tunnel syndrome on my wrists because of that. Electrical tools, make sure you got a good meter, a good wire stripper. Make sure you've got the right terminal crimpers. Don't get one of these $5 crimpers. Get that really good ratchet type made for insulated. It'll make sure that all your terminals crimp properly, and I can't think of anything that will make your car more unreliable than using a poor crimper and having all those wires start to come loose on you. You'll just drive you crazy once the car is finished. Get the right crimpers, and if you need some heat shrink, make sure you get that heat gun. Also, a lot of the tools you really don't need to buy. Specific tools like torque wrenches, gear pullers, special brake tools, tap and die sets. A lot of those tools are available for free from your local auto parts store. Any of your national chains, again, Napa, AutoZone, anyone, just about any of them out there, O'Reilly's. They all have a tool lending program. You simply go in, you pay a deposit on the tool on your credit card, you take it home and you use it, you bring it back, they give you your money back. So a really great resource to save yourself some money. And again, all those tools take a lot of space, and most people have very limited space in their garage. So don't buy those if you don't have to. All right. Okay, we're still out there and we're still preparing, and those 6 to 12 weeks, getting ready for that car to come. So start getting your parts together too. Now, some parts you want to buy now, some parts you want to buy later. So really focus first on these parts you want to buy now and get them ready. And the real objective here is to get those parts completely ready. So once your kit arrives, they're literally ready to drop in the frame. So things like your engine, transmission, rear end, maybe other donor parts, depending what's in your manual. Get those drivetrain parts cleaned up, painted. If you're going to do the wiring on it, get the wiring done, but get them completely finished. So you can see over here on the right, this is the motor after it was ready to go. I did have to buy an aftermarket wire harness, an ECU setup for it, so I got all that wired up. That's what that pile of wire is, and it's ready to go on. Cleaned up the rear end, got that ready, and you can kind of see in this box down below, this is all the stuff that I took off the motor. All the old emission stuff and that sort of thing, because that's not required in the state that I live in, North Carolina, if it's going to be registered as a custom. So that really helped a lot to get that stuff off. Now, on the other things, you need to really think about the shopping you're going to be doing after. You should say that the things you're going to buy after your kit arrives. You'll need to buy everything up front. The key point here is that an awful lot of the time you spend on a kit car to do the build, a lot of that build actually happens outside the garage, doing shopping, working out problems, that sort of thing. Reading your manual. There's quite a bit that happens outside the garage, and I got to tell you, time is your most precious element here as far as getting the car done. So start shopping on those. Make your selections. Write it down on a log so you know exactly what you're looking for out there. And so when the time comes, about a week or two before you actually need it, order it so it's there in time. But that's a good way to spread out the cost of the car versus paying it all up front. So things like you're going to have the frame powder coated, looking at local powder coaters, how you're going to get your frame to and from the powder coaters, transportation, wheels. Oh my gosh, there are thousands of wheels. And to get the one that looks right on your car, with the right offset, with the right width, with the right bolt pattern, is a lot to kind of pull all together. So you'll spend a lot of time probably choosing the wheels that are right for your car. Of course, other components. And since you're not buying it right away, go ahead and put that money aside so it's there when you need it. So when you're out there selecting those donor parts, there's lots of sources for those. The ones that probably I use a lot here, probably from the top on down. Craigslist and salvage yards. These are great ways to get local, cheap parts. It's usually pretty quick. And one of the nice things is you can actually hold it and look at it and see it before you buy it. Part of the cons on that is you do have a limited choice, and you may spend a fair amount of time, wandering around the salvage yards looking for exactly what you need. I do find these are really best for used parts. Now, for new and lightly used parts, eBay is a great solution as well. I bought a lot of parts off of eBay. Great selection, usually good price, but you really can't see them or hold them in your hand before you actually buy them. Now, I must say that I've had very good luck with eBay, but I buy very carefully, and you can ask the sellers questions before you actually buy. So that's actually worked out quite well for me. Now, for things like brand new parts, particularly high performance parts, I do think you should get those new because those are things you're going to want a warranty on. But of course, the con is that they do cost a lot. So those are the sources of parts. When you do buy your running gear, there's some things you need to think about on that as well. Really get familiar with your local Department of Motor Vehicle regulations. You need to really know what they require to get your car registered and on the road. Generally, they're going to do some sort of an inspection before you actually get your car licensed. And what they're looking for in the inspection are kind of two key things. They call it a safety inspection, but it's really not. One of the key things is theft. They want to make sure you're not putting a stolen engine or transmission or other running gear, major components, into the car. So they're very interested in things like the serial number that's stamped onto that block. And in some states, I understand they even look at transmissions and other components. So when you buy your components, first, don't buy them from any sort of dubious source, but also make sure that those serial numbers are very clearly marked on the block. And on some cars, particularly I can tell you for Fords, they actually have a problem sometimes with the serial numbers on there not being clear. They don't engrave them deep enough, so they actually literally wipe off. So be really careful when you buy those parts that those serial numbers are on there. I know of a fellow up in New York who ran into a real problem here. He got his car pretty much finished, took it to the DMV. They couldn't find a serial number on his motor, and they impounded his car, would not give it back to him. And he felt lucky after about a month, they finally allowed him to go into the salvage yard. And the only way they'd let him in there to get his car back is he had to bring an engine hoist, pull his motor out, leave the motor, and then take his car out of the impound yard. And he had done some really great work, custom intake, a number of other things he had done, spent a lot of money on. He literally lost it all. So don't find yourself in the same spot. Really get familiar with your local DMV laws. Again, this is where your local car club can help you too, because other people in your car club have probably gone through that registration process and they give you some good advice. There's an awful lot going on with motors and transmissions, enough so, lots of moving parts. You got the electronics and all that, where I really didn't feel comfortable just taking a motor that had already been pulled. I wanted to hear that thing run with my own ears. So I made sure I saw the motor run, ran it through the gears, and I paid a little bit more for that, but I really do think it paid off in the end. Again, that was one of my risks. I was worried that it wouldn't start. I picked an EFI motor. So by ensuring that was a known good part, I knew the motor was good. I knew what I had to put on an aftermarket ECU on it and harness. So if I know the motor's good, then if I had a problem starting it, I know it's something else and it's not the motor. So it's a matter of just reducing the variables you need to troubleshoot if you have a problem. Fortunately, mine started on the first twist of the key, so I was very happy about that. On the rear end, check for end play, smooth rotation. You want to make sure the brakes are included. I do recommend that you do not modify the motor before you install it and start it for the first time. Again, there's a lot going on in the motor, and it only takes one thing to make it not start or run wrong, or in one case, example I tell you about, a fellow was having trouble with it blowing oil. He bought a brand new motor from Ford Racing, nice little small block, and put it in the car, but he wanted to change out the intake manifold of the 8. A very simple thing, right? Just pull off the old intake and put on the new one. What could go wrong? Very simple thing. And the engine started just fine, and actually it ran good too, but it was blowing blue smoke. And he went around and around with Ford Motor Company trying to figure out why this brand new motor was blowing smoke. And it turned out that the intake manifold that he had didn't quite match the heads that were on this Ford Racing motor. And there was a little air gap there that was sucking up some oil from the valley. But I bet it took him a month or two to get it figured out. So even something as simple as an intake manifold, wait until you start it for the first time to change those things out. It'll save you a lot of time. All right. Still waiting for delivery. There's other things you can do. The last and certainly not least, is getting yourself ready. You want to make sure that you get rid of all those work distractions. Those things are going to distract you from the work once you actually get started. So things like work down your honey-do list. You want to get your significant other happy. So get those down so your wife isn't bugging you to fix the hallway light when you're in the middle of your project. and get your, what I like to call my hot rod widow, get her ready that, just let her know that you are going to be focused on this car for a while. You're not going to want to go out to dinner a lot or these social occasions, and whatever she could do to help keep the distractions away would be very, very appreciated. Fortunately, my spouse really did help me an awful lot on this and allowed me to really stay focused. And last but not least, unplug the TV. Big time waster. You unplug the TV, you're surprised how much other stuff just happens to get done. Go through and read that manual again, this time in more detail. Really look at what it's going to take to build it, envision what it's going to take, what tools you're going to need, and just ensure you're really prepared. And I'll mention this again, review those DMV requirements so you're ready, so you're ready to go. Okay, we finally made it. That was all the stuff you could do before delivery day, so you can really get a head start on things. Delivery day is a big day, a lot of fun. It's like a big Christmas, like 3 days of Christmas. Don't be surprised if you're late. If they're late on delivering the car, that happens quite a bit. You also may get a partial shipment. You certainly should get the majority of the parts, but there may be some parts that go back order, and they send you the rest of the car so you can go ahead and get started. But this is a really good time to really set yourself up for success. Go through and inventory the parts. Go through all the parts. Get them organized, label the boxes, just kind of like you can see here on the bottom left. These are what it looked like afterwards with everything labeled. So when you get in the build, you can see there's lots of boxes. If you don't have those labeled, you don't know where all the parts are. And when you've got these many boxes, the last thing you want to do is be searching through all the boxes every time you need a new part. So label them, and that's going to keep you from spending time looking through boxes and more time actually building the car. So get yourself familiar with the parts. And I've got to say, I really thought this is the thing that I was probably I expected least to enjoy, because I just don't like, checklists and that sort of thing. But it turned out to be much more interesting than I thought it would be. Opening up all the boxes, some really cool parts. You can see I kind of fell in love with this grill. Don't get too familiar with your parts. But it really is, it was really, like I say, like 3 days of Christmas. Really enjoyed it. And as you go in, make sure you let the supplier know if you turn up with your inventory that you're missing some parts, or if you've got any broken parts. For example, you can see up here in the upper right side, I had a broken windshield. So since I had just got the part, they know it was something that I hadn't done. It got broken in shipping. They replaced it right away, free of charge. So that's a good reason to go ahead and do that inventory right away. Okay? Running. So a little bit more on these build phases. Again, this is that ideal building schedule, I think, that kind of fits with the temperature throughout the year. Here on the left, the blue is winter, and so I broke it into these major phases. And by major phases, there's something at the end of this phase that's a significant accomplishment that you feel like you've really made a significant step towards completing the car. So I just go down through these. So the 5% phase is when you have this done, you'll be essentially 5% done with the car. That includes things like inventorying, getting the powder coat, a chassis back in the powder coater, and suspension if you do that. Now while that's happening, you don't want to let that stop you. Of course, your frame is a pretty integral to just about anything you want to build, but you'll still build a lot of the sub-assemblies, so you don't stop during that. For example, when I was having my frame and a number of my suspension pieces powder coated, I was building the doors, things like the handles. There's actually quite a bit in the doors. I was building some of the spindles. I could build parts of the suspension. I could work on part of the electronics and some other pieces. And there was actually enough there to keep me busy while while my frame was out being powder coated. So there's always a way around a roadblock. You'll know you're 20% finished once you get that motor started. That includes things like building the chassis, getting that motor in there, getting all the wiring done, getting the fuel system going. You know you're 40% done once what we call go-karting the chassis. That's when you actually take it down your neighborhood street for the first time, hopefully on the slow side until you get comfortable and you know the brakes work and all that. It includes things like brake, steering, getting the floor in, the shifter, and the wheels and tires, of course. And you know you're about 60% finished once you've got it to the point where you can take it to your first cruise in. That means the raw body's there, you've got the lights and gauges all working, and you've gotten through your DMV process. So this is also where you get out there, you start having fun with your kit, with your car much quicker than waiting till all the way to the end. You know, people really do love seeing cars in progress. Because for every one of you guys out there who are actually building a car, there's probably 10 more guys thinking about it. So they want to see what a car looks like half finished, and they're going to be around your car asking you lots of questions. In fact, I'd say a half finished car gets just as much attention as the finest car in a show, just because you can actually see what it looks like before you get the interior in. And what it takes to actually get it built. So don't be ashamed to go out there and take that car, even though it's not completely finished, out there and start having some fun with it. You know you're 80% finished when you get the rest of these things done you see here in yellow during the summer, in this case. And kind of moved into a different phase here. I was really heads down trying to get it finished enough so I could drive it and get it to my first cruise in. Then after there, I lightened up a little bit and was having fun on weekends, going to cruise-ins, and then during the week, really completing the car with just finishing the body, finishing the interior, audio, that sort of thing. And then you know you're really done once you get that final paint job on. Now, one of the reasons you really want to take that car out right in this beginning, way before this, to go out for drives and cruise-ins, is it takes some time to shake out all the different stuff that's going in your car, get the doors aligned, and really understand how much wheel travel you're going to have, and are your wheels going to rub in your wheel wells, and all those little things that go wrong. You want to find out those things before you put that expensive paint job on the car. And the last thing you want is to go out and paint the car, take it out for its first drive, and your wheel scrubs the fender and ruins that brand new paint job. So it really does pay to spend some time, put some miles on it before you do that final paint job. All right. Okay, so you need to think about not only the long-term goals, but just sort of getting into a daily routine, a daily grind, as I like to call it here. You can expect you're going to have some really good days, and you're going to have some bad, frustrating days as well. But don't let those bad days stop you. There's always something else you can work on if you're stuck on one part. And that gives you some time to ask questions of people on a forum, your technical support, or all those different areas I said where you can get help. As you're going through it, you're naturally going to think of other things that need to be done that are on your mind. And if you just let it sit in your mind, it's going to be a distraction for you. Focus between the manual and what you think you need to do. So just put it down the list. Just empty your brain and put that into a to-do list. Same thing if you know you've got some parts coming up where you're halfway through, putting together an assembly, let's say, and you're missing a simple bolt. Well, to go out and get a bolt, it probably is going to take you probably an hour and a half to get a bolt, because it's probably a half hour to get to, by the time you jump in your car, get to the place, probably a waiting line to check out, and a half hour to get back. That's a good hour and a half that you could have spent working on your car. So do a shopping list, and because you'll end up getting many separate things, and then just picking that up on your next trip by the parts store or hardware store. And in the meantime, just skip over that particular item and move on to something where you do have the parts. Then also you need to think about your energy level throughout the day. For me, I tend to start out very low in energy. It's hard for me to get out into the garage and just get started. But once I'm there, I get exhilarated. I really enjoy what I'm doing, and my energy level goes way up. And that's a really good time to do those tough problem-solving things or difficult tasks where you're sort of on your back, looking up into the dash trying to get some of the wiring done, those really difficult tasks while you're still fresh. And then as the day wears on out there in the garage, you'll find you'll start getting worn down, a little frustrated, and that's the time to really change what you're working on. Start going for the simple tasks. And tasks that, let's say, if you screw up, it won't cost you more time somewhere down the road, like a slipping screwdriver or breaking a nut or something like that. So do those simple things at the end, and then at the very end of the day, I find it very helpful for me anyway to put away all the tools that I don't plan on using the next day and cleaning up the shop. And don't forget when you're sweeping up the floor to really check out the stuff you sweep out. You'd be surprised how many parts you find in those sweepings. Lots of times, I can tell you how many times I was out there working on my car, swept up at the end of the day, and by looking through my sweepings, I found parts that I hadn't even realized I'd lost yet. So that's a great way to find those parts. And by having a clean floor, when you do drop a part, it's a lot easier to find a drop part on a clean floor than it is on one that has junk laying everywhere. So keep your area clean. It'll help you actually speed up your build. Okay. Oh, and at the very end, don't forget to have a beer at the end and, of course, reward yourself. And just like Larry the Cable Guy says, you just got to get her done. Okay, part of the daily grind is also outside the garage. A lot happens outside the garage, and you can get a lot done outside the garage. So be thinking about what you want to do that evening, assuming that you're working a day shift and you're working on it during the evenings and weekends. Think about it a little bit during the day. How much do you want to accomplish in the next day? Then pre-read that manual maybe once or twice, maybe even 3 times, and really think about the details of what you need. Do you have the parts? Do you need help? Where do you think you're going to have problems? That sort of thing, and really work through that and just to get some of that mental work done before you actually get into the garage. If you need to order parts, get those parts ordered online. A lot of stuff you can actually do at work. Don't be afraid to bring that manual to work. I bet your coworkers would love to see the project you're working on. But that's really do look at that, whether it's during lunch or during a break. Just take a look at that and do that pre-reading. So when you get to the garage at night, you're really prepared. You're mentally prepared to get started on that. If you've got some questions, that's a great time to maybe log on to your local forum or call tech support. And then on your way home, that shopping list that you were making in the garage last night, well, on your way home, that's a great time to stop by an auto parts store or hardware store to pick up those parts all at once to combine that trip. Right? Okay, mock-ups. Doing mock-ups can really save you an awful lot of time and money. There's an example of how you can do mock-ups. This is the actual motor in my car. So what I did first off in the upper right here is I did a mock-up just to get the thing started. And again, I wanted to reduce the number of variables, things I'd changed in the motor. So I want to keep things as close as possible. So what I ended up doing was modifying the inlet hose that actually came with the car and made it short enough and reshaped it enough so I could stick the mass airflow sensor in there. So I knew it was about as close to the original car as I could make it, just to get it started. Unfortunately, it did start up on the first twist of the key. So that mock-up really helped me there. And then to actually finish it off on the car, I knew I was going to have to do a snorkel inlet that is very tight under the hood, and it was going to be difficult to lay it out just by looking at it. And once I actually looked at these parts, it had to be by a company called Spectre, but they're very expensive. But I noticed in their online catalog they gave the dimensions, and I went to my local hardware store and I discovered that I think it was 3-inch sewer pipe had very, very similar dimensions. I had the same 90 and 45 degree bends, and of course straight pieces. And so you can see down here in the lower left where I used those sewer pipe pieces to mock up what that final piece is going to look like down here in the lower right. And that really saved me a lot of time. Now, those mock-ups, that mock-up didn't cost me much of anything. In fact, once I finished it, I was able to return the elbows I kept the straight pipe because I'd cut that. I think the whole thing cost me $5. And that saved me from buying a lot of parts that I would have to replace from this aluminum tubing manufacturer, Spectre. So you do mock-ups. It does save you time and money. As you go through the project, you can expect what I call the mid-project blues. Or I'll tell you when it hit me is I had gotten it to about the point you can see here. I had a lot of work done, tremendous amount. It was really starting to look like a car. And I sat down, did a to-do list of everything I had left, and it was huge. It was a huge list, and it struck me how big the project is. It's one of these things, the more you work, the bigger you realize it is. It would have been very easy to get disappointed. So one of the things I did was this picture to help me keep the end in mind. So if you look very, very closely at this picture, you'll see it truly is just another mock-up. You'll see the door is taped on, the hood and side covers are taped on, there's no glass in it. In fact, if you look very close, you'll see that there's no driver's door in this even. Inside, I'm just sitting on a crate. But by doing this picture, I kind of envisioned what it was going to be like being in the car and having fun with it. And as silly as it sounds, this picture helped me to keep my eyes on the prize at the end and keep rolling on it and get right past those mid-project blues. You heard me talk earlier about roadblocks. Roadblocks, you can either let roadblocks stop you, or you can work your way around roadblocks. There's almost always something else you can do on your car, building your car, while you're stuck in another area. So go around it. And this was a good example here. In the front suspension of this car, you can see where the red circles are. There's a little pivot that goes in each one of those. There's 4 on each side. You can see there's a picture of them here on my fingers. And those were back ordered. And I didn't get those for like 7 weeks. Remember, I built this whole thing in 10 weeks. So I could have let that stop me for 7 weeks. But instead, I worked around it, knowing that this was at the center of the car. I mean, once you put these in, you've got the suspension around it, the radiators around it, power steering, and it's very tightly compact in there. So the further I went, I knew I was going to have to pull that stuff apart. And I did once I got it, but it came apart very quickly and went together almost as quickly, which is just basically part of building a car. The first time you put it together, there's a bunch of fitting, you're figuring it out, how you do it. But when you put it together a second time, it goes together much, much faster because you learn as you go along. For example, the doors on the car probably took me, I bet I spent, I'm going to say, if you look at all the pieces, handles, hinges, alignment, windows, locks, all that sort of thing, I probably spent 3 days on the first door. And the second door, half day, because you learn. You learn how to pull it together. And you can see I was pretty happy to get those pieces. All right, so here I am on day 70, and a really proud day to get it out there and start actually cruising on the road. You can see here it's not completely finished. I cruised it at first with no hood or side covers, which is perfectly fine for a hot rod. And the black there is just a raw fiberglass, and it looked actually pretty amazingly pretty good. A little trick here is for example, this one's black. You can find wax with a color pigment in it. It's sold at most auto parts store or sometimes in motorcycle shops. And what it's for is for people who have scratches in their car, say in a black car, use this black wax. It gives you a nice black finish, but the black goes in the scratches, so you don't see the scratches. So that's exactly what I did here. I just waxed it with some of that black wax, and the body looked pretty darn good. The only thing that really gave it away was some of the seams from the mold. It also comes in other colors. I see that a lot of companies are doing it in yellow or in red, their fiberglass, and they have red impregnated wax and yellow as well, and I think blue and a couple of other colors as well. So that's a nice trick to make your raw body look good even before you get it painted. So get out there, start having fun with it. And like I say, once I got to this point, I slowed down a little bit and just working on the finishing touches before I got it painted. All right, so those are kind of the key pieces there. So in summary, these are some of the things you should do to help accelerate your build. First things first, you've got to really enjoy the build. Really enjoy what you're doing. I got to tell you, for me, it was a labor of love, and I really hope it's the same for you. Time is definitely your most precious resource while you're building a car. There's never enough time, so you've got to get everything out of the way and really make sure that you are using the very best of your time, both inside and outside the garage. Always keep the end in mind, but do focus on each day's goal, that daily grind to keep you rolling. You do want to pace yourself. Last thing you want to do is burn yourself out. So leave some energy for the next day. It truly is a marathon, not a sprint. Think about not what you're going to try to get done today, although that's important, but think about today, tomorrow, and the next day. So you keep on going with a nice daily rhythm. Don't let roadblocks stop you. Just take on a kind of a view that there are no roadblocks. There's always something else you can do. I can honestly say that I never had one day during the build where I was completely blocked. Came pretty close, down to just a day or two before I was waiting for parts to come in. But there was always something else that I could do that kept pushing me forward. Do mock-ups. Definitely keep it simple. One of the great things about kit cars, they do a lot of the engineering for you, fitting of parts, and although you want to make this kit car your own, really do your own judgment on how much time you want to spend customizing versus pulling it together, and just find the right compromise for you. Definitely keep it simple. I see guys who put in power hoods and these ISIS wiring harnesses and all sort of complicated stuff. Just keep in mind that the more complicated you make it, the longer it's going to take you to build and the less reliable it's going to be at the end, most likely. Use that time out the garage wisely. And last but not least, know what you're good at. Really be honest with yourself about that, where you're going to need some help. And there are going to be some things that are just better left to other people to do. So kind of know where you want to stand on that. So conversely to that, I thought it might be kind of fun to think about what to down. So let's see here. Yeah, this is a good one. How about let your wife plan your social calendar? Or even better yet, have a newborn child. That'll put the car on the blocks for years to come. Put a TV in your garage. You know, if you're like me, if there's a TV in the garage, I'm likely to kind of sit by the bench and watch TV versus working on my car. Don't modify that motor before you install it, like we talked about earlier. Customize everything. Just think about how much you do want to customize it. Work when you're tired. When you work when you're tired, you make mistakes. You break things on the car that you may have to fix later on, which costs you even more time, or you might break yourself doing something unsafe, and then the doctor needs to fix you. So don't work when you're tired. Be a perfectionist. This is really a big one. I see people out who are just perfectionists on every little detail, things that they'll never even see once they get a body on or no one else will see. So you need to think about what level of quality you want to put into the car. And there's a wide range here. It could be anywhere from just a car you want to have fun and cruise in over the weekend, or something that's a Riddler award winner, this perfect car. You need to find that place somewhere in between that's right for you. Maybe you just want to be proud of it at a cruising. But once you decide what level you want, build the entire car to that level. And then down here, you build the car completely on your own. No help from anyone. That will definitely take you a long, long time. Go out there and get some help. It really is the best way. You'd be surprised in the relationships you build with people just going out and asking their questions, and they get a sense of satisfaction out of helping you as well with what questions you have. So do get some help out there. All right, so that's it for this presentation. If you have any questions, you can contact me like where it says down below here. That's my email address, and I'm also pretty active in these two forums. I'm Rumbles. You can see me out there. This is actually the finished car with the paint job on it. So it's my pride and joy, and I'm still enjoying it today. It has one One thing about kit cars and hot rods, like the old hot rodders say, is they're never ever really completely finished, and there's still little things they're doing on it, and I'm sure there will be for years to come to improve it, make it run better, quieter, and so on. If you are interested in the journal of how I built this car, you can see over here in the red how to download this journal. It's it's about 110 pages long, 125 illustrations with step-by-step instructions meant to really complement the assembly manual in some places where it's weak. And it's kind of fun as you go through it too. Try to make it fun as I built it. That's it for today. If you need to get a hold of me, just use one of these um, contact sources, and I'd be happy to do that. So take care and enjoy your kit car build.